What's up, everyone? Welcome into Doink Sports. We are getting ready for Thursday night football. I am so excited to get right into it. For starters, while we let some people join in, we're going to be talking about the recap for these two teams, Commanders and Packers, from last week. Well, let's start with the Washington Commanders. They took care of business versus the New York Giants, getting a victory 21-6 over them. What stood out to me most was their dominant defense. They have so much defensive talent on that front, and they did a great job of containing Russell Wilson. 17 for 38, just 168 yards. But one thing of note about the receiving game, the Commanders were not able to take away the production from the Giants' number one and number two receivers, specifically Malik Neighbors and Wan'Dale Robinson. Neighbors had 5 catches, 71 yards. Wan'Dale Robinson had 6 receptions for 55 yards. I thought that was a lot. For me, in my opinion, the Commanders were not able to take away what the Giants did best, and that's get the ball to their playmakers. Now, they were able to shut down the run game. It was atrocious for the Giants. 15 carries for just 13 yards. For 30 yards with their backs. I thought the Commanders' front seven looked absolutely incredible. What I'm super excited to see is how do they go up against Josh Jacobs and this Packers offensive line? Because the Lions actually did a good job of that, and we'll get into that in just a moment. But let's continue to wrap up this Commanders post view heading into their Packers game. The offense looked a little shaky at times. 5 punts, 3 touchdowns, and 1 drive to finish the game there at the end. So far, a 5-4 punt to touchdown ratio. I was not excited at all at what the Commanders had to offer in the run game. Now, JCM, Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, seems to be running back one. He had the most carries by far out of any back. He had a 42-yard bust run for, 42 yards, but he ended up with 10 carries, 82 yards on the day. I think he'll be the run game specialist, but a running back by committee as a whole, in my opinion, for Washington. Now, moving on to the pass game, Jaden Daniels was as mobile as he ever has been. We did not see him take a step back, in my opinion. Finished the day with 301 total yards, 1 touchdown, and Deebo Samuel actually became a focal point of this Commanders offense. That's probably one of my favorite skill group players in the NFL, just by the way he is. Offenses get so creative in their ways to use him. He had a carry for 19 yards, 7 receptions for 70 plus yards. I was extremely impressed with how the Commanders were able to use him. So on the day, total 8 touches, 98 yards, and a touchdown. There's a lot of value there with Deebo Samuel, both with your fantasy plays and, as we'll get into here, some of your prop bet plays as well. Now, looking at the Packers, they clamped the Lions on defense in the first 3 quarters. Jared Goff, yes, had 225 yards on the day, got sacked 4 times. But let me add this, 14 of his completions came to running backs. I believe Jahmyr Gibbs had 10 catches, and David Montgomery had 4 catches, and it was for a big chunk of yards as well. So the pass game did not get going. The only guy that succeeded for the Lions in the pass game was Sam Laporta. And as we'll get into this in just a little bit, the Packers have struggled with tight ends. So that's something for fantasy and your prop bets that you should be taking a look at. Now, offensively, Jordan Love was as effective as ever. 16 for 22, 188 yards, 2 touchdowns in the air. 10 different pass catchers got the ball for the Green Bay Packers offense. To me, that means that there's no wide receiver one, which is pretty much par for the course as far as the Packers go. There has not been a standout wide receiver for the Packers since Devontae Adams left probably 5 years ago now, I think. So I think that's going to be the story going forward. Looking at the rest of this Packers offense, Josh Jacobs is the bell cow back per the usual. 19 carries for 66 yards. Now, the Lions front seven did a good job of containing him in the run game. It was the back end that really struggled, specifically the pass rush as well. But as we move on to kind of talking about both of these teams in a preview, That's going to be the topic of discussion. Now, to start, we're going to use our Doink Sports tabs here to check out number one, the injuries. And as you can see here, we've got Zay Anderson, Aaron Banks is questionable. I imagine that these guys are going to play. I haven't seen any specific reports, but if I had to guess, I would say both of them would play just because this is a short week. When you have players that are trying to recover from a Sunday game, they usually sit out, especially vets like Aaron Banks. I think the Packers' offensive line will be solidified. So overall, as we're looking, the majority of these injuries are pretty non-important, if I do say so myself. Now, Tress Way, excuse me, for the Commanders has a back issue as a punter. That could play into side play, but player props, obviously, we're not out here betting on punters, right? So with that being said, I think the Commanders here are indeed the underdogs, both by my feeling and, of course, by the spread, as you can see here. Let's go ahead and hop into player props, though, because I think the side for this game is extremely hard to decide. There is one prop bet that I really like as far as sides go, but we'll hop into that in just a little while. Now, using the Doink Sports tool, we can see here on the offensive side of the football, Jaden Daniels has done a phenomenal job of putting the ball in the air effectively and running the ball himself. Of course, he's probably the second best, arguably the first best, number one running threat as a quarterback. Him and Lamar Jackson go back and forth. But as you can see here in the comparison of Jaden Daniels and the Green Bay Packers defense, he struggled, the Packers struggle here against Caleb Williams with rush attempts. So this is a red flag to me. As you can see, 10%, 10%, 10%, allowing over the lines here at the bottom, 8.5 carries, 46.5 rushing yards. So what I want to do is I want to get a better sample size of what it looks like when the Packers face a dual threat. Because let's look at the majority of these quarterbacks they face. Brandon Allen, Tua, Jared Goff, Spencer Rattler, I would not define as a dual threat. Sam Darnold. Caleb Williams is kind of a hybrid, I guess. Jalen Hurts is probably the closest to that line, but I'm going to use the Doink Sports tool and filter rush attempts and look at Packers defenses versus quarterbacks who run 8 or more times, which we can see over here consistently is pretty much par for the course for Jaden Daniels. There are a couple of outliers, but the majority of these games, he's carrying the ball himself. So looking at filtering more than 8 rush attempts, we can see that these numbers drastically change. Now, the Packers, of course, have not faced a ton of dual threat quarterbacks in the last few years. So I'm specifically going to use 2023 to 2024. And looking at these numbers, it's 5 for 5 here on the rush attempts, over 8.5. The rushing yards is 3 for 5. 3 for 5. So 60%. And if you look at who they played, Justin Fields, who I would put on par with Jaden Daniels' dual threat ability, Desmond Ridder, who I would not, Tommy DeVito, who I guess had a hell of a day scrambling. It must be because the Packers put a ton of pressure on him. But guys like Jalen Hurts and Caleb Williams, once again, these are players that are comparable with Jaden Daniels and his dual threat ability. Now, one more thing I want to do here is look at the filter of how Jaden Daniels plays his games on the road. As of right now, in his last 10, he's averaging 10 carries per game. But when you filter that to away, you see that number drops down to 9.1. That is slightly alarming with this line being at 8.5. And if you look at some of the defenses that he's played, the Giants did a phenomenal job against him last year. The Ravens, of course, with their great pass rush. Dallas, Micah Parsons did a phenomenal job containing Jaden Daniels this year, actually, in January. Some of these other games, though, the Lions did not have a pass rush at the end of the season. They were shy. Aiden Hutchinson was out, and there were tons of other injuries to the Lions offense. Now, the Buccaneers, that was an interesting game, to say the least. The Commanders offense was just rolling there. But what I really want to focus on here is this 9.1. Looking at it holistically, I love 8.5. But as you can see, the favorite or the best odds that you can get for that is minus 120 at Fliff. I don't necessarily think that the majority of you guys are out there looking at Fliff. That's a pretty, or I'm sorry, Fanatics. That's a newer sports book that not a lot of people have an account on. I would look at some other plays. FanDuel at minus 130. That's not great odds, in my opinion. Novig at minus 130, Caesars at minus 133. To me, this rushing prop, which I have seen a lot of people want to take, is just a little too high, in my opinion. Now, of course, we're looking at this filter over here on the right, and you could see 100% of these go over 8.5. Well, I have it filtered at 8. So if we cancel that out, the Packers defense has done an excellent job containing quarterbacks. Now, I've said it already in this, but the majority of these guys are not dual threats. So the 8.5 is a stay away for me. What is, however, something that I want to take is the 46.5. Over 46.5. Jaden Daniels has hit this in his last 7 games. He's averaging 61.2 yards per game. The Packers refiltering this out, going to 8 rush attempts in the last 5, have allowed this 60% of the time, and they did it versus guys that I think are just as talented as Jaden Daniels in the run game. I'm specifically looking at this game from 2023. Justin Fields, 9 carries, 59 yards. That's what I'm thinking is going to happen. Micah Parsons does an excellent job putting pressure on quarterbacks in the pocket. But once quarterbacks get out of the pocket, it's going to be on the rest of this Packers defense to slow Jaden Daniels. I genuinely think that the Packers are going to struggle against Jaden Daniels' elusiveness. Like I said, looking at this regular slate here, they have not played a lot of dual threat quarterbacks in their last 10 games. Jaden Daniels did not show that he had a sophomore slump in game 1 versus an extremely talented Giants front 7, 11 carries, 68 yards. So I'm going to use this to track our bets here on Doink Sports. We're just going to hammer track bet right here. We've got it at Caesars for minus 112, and that is the first pick of the day. Let's continue to move through the slate because I like a couple other Commanders props here. Now, I mentioned this in the preview before we started really talking about this. Austin Eckler and Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, it's questionable as to who is going to get the lion's share of the carries. Now, Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt actually had 10 carries last week, and his line currently is at, I believe, 8.5. That's not a bad line there. I think Vegas is pretty much on the spot with that. Let me know in the comments who you have as your running back 1. Do you like Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, or do you like Austin Eckler in their rush attempts and rushing yards? Now, this line is extremely low, 21.5 there for Eckler. As we could see last week, he had just 6 carries for 26 yards. I think that's pretty comparable to what we're going to be seeing this upcoming game in Thursday Night Football. Not necessarily something that, I would quote unquote love to take there. And as we see here, of course, the Packers are allowing 21 yards to running back 1 70% of the time, which actually is pretty impressive now that you think about it. Now, I see Bridge here says, think JCM takes over for the old man in the coming weeks. I agree. Austin Eckler has probably shown his age one too many times with his time with the Commanders. As we can see here with his rush attempts, they've pretty much declined from up here at 7, 11, 13 down to 2, 3, and down here at 6 times. I don't think he's a serious focal point going forward. The question is tonight, will he hit any of these props? And as of right now, I don't love any of them. The Packers, of course, if you filter the rush attempts for less than, we'll say his line is at 5, so we'll say 6, and we'll look at that. You don't see hardly any experience here on the statistics of a running back, quote unquote, running back 1 having less than 6 carries. Now, we actually do see one here with Jordan Mims, I believe. That's interesting because I believe he's a wide receiver, but I guess the New Orleans Saints did not have Alvin Kamara healthy last year. So, with that being said, looking at this slate, Austin Eckler, Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt. If I had to love anything, I love this prop right here. 38.5 yards for Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt. He is the more explosive guy. He got 10 carries last week. His longest rush was 42 yards. The Packers have been stout against running back twos, but I digress and flip this to talk about running back ones. This is how we're going to have to compare it here because I think JCM is going to be the running back one for the Commanders. So his line is at 38.5. If we go up here and look at rush attempts, and we'll call it 8, we'll filter it out more than 8 rush attempts for players. They're on average are averaging 66 yards per game. And we see this dates back to October of last season. And we could just do a little mental math here. His prop is at 38.5. So he hit that, or the Packers allow that 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times. So 80%. And of course, Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt hit that easily in his game last week. So let's look at where we can find the best odds on a major sports book. We've got Novig down here, which is more of a sharp book, but right below or right above it is Caesars at minus 108. So I'm going to track this bet here at 38.5. I think this goes over. Let's track that, and we will select the Caesars Sportsbook. We'll place track, and we'll move on. Those are my 2 plays so far. Now, in the receiving game, Terry McLaurin last week did not receive his typical target share. Now, this could be because Terry McLaurin was in contract disputes with the Commanders for the entirety of the offseason. He signed an extension shortly before the season began. I think that, one, the Commanders were cautious to use him. He has not been ramped up in terms of being active. Could we see him be targeted more? Absolutely. I think he's still the wide receiver one in this group. But as we can see from last season, the target share is pretty high. It's roughly around 21, 22%. But as we can see in week 1, he only received 4 targets. So as of right now, I'm staying away from Terry McLaurin in his receiving props, receiving yards props, and longest catch props. I do kind of like the longest catch over 21.5, but I won't make that something official just because we've yet to see Terry McLaurin get ramped up, number 1, in practice, and number 2, on the field. So as it sits right now, we're going to move on and talk about Deebo Samuel. Now, Deebo had quite the day against the Giants. He became the focal point of this offense, in my opinion. 10 targets, 7 catches, a rush for a 19-yard touchdown as well. I thought this thoroughly looked like Deebo Samuel of old, the guy who was used as a gadget guy in the skill group. So looking at the way that this slate plays out, once again, similarly with Terry McLaurin, I'm not sure how the Commanders plan to use him going forward. Now, he got a heavy workload in week 1, but Deebo Samuel is yet another guy to me that seems more along the lines of a wide receiver 2 in this Commanders offense. I don't know if he gets 10 targets again in week 2, especially on the road. If we're looking at a guy like Noah Brown, who played an important part of this Commanders offense last year, we can see that target ratio is somewhere in the range of 20-ish%. Now, last week, Deebo got 34%. I think that line will go down a little bit. So over 4.5 catches, I kind of like it. Obviously, it's tough to use the tool here because we are looking at Deebo Samuel, who was on the 49ers. So to me, I need to see more games from this season before I begin to make a solidified opinion on these lines. Over 4.5 seems like a perfect line from the sports books there. This is a stay away play for me. Now, speaking of the wide receiver group, Noah Brown, in my opinion, is still kind of a focal point in this Commanders offense. We saw him get 3 targets last week, 2 catches for 27 yards. He had a long catch of 18. I think he still plays a major part of this Commanders offense as wide receiver 3. And as we can see here, the Packers have not done the greatest job in the world at containing wide receiver 3s. And the props here are relatively low. Now, looking at the receptions for Noah Brown, it's at 1.5. We see we can get it here at 2 for minus 118 from Prize Picks. As we can see here, he's hit that 80% of the time in his last 10 games. He played all of these games, by the way, with the Commanders. Previously, he was with the Texans, but last year played 11 games for Washington. I like where Noah Brown is at in this Commanders offense. The thing that I'm looking at, however, is this right here, 20.5 receiving yards at 19.5. That is something that I really like. As we can see, reception wise, he is consistently hitting over this 2 line at 80% of the time. In my opinion, if he can hit 2 catches, he is a wide receiver that can hit 19.5 yards. And we can reflect that with his longest catch being at 13.5. That's pretty on par with wide receiver 3s across the league, and he's hit it in 80% of his games. So if he can catch 2 balls, I think he easily gets over this 19.5 at minus 115. We can take a look at the 20.5 and track it. We just see FanDuel here at minus 112. We're buying 1 yard for 3 points. I like that a lot. It's not a lot of given value, but gives you that hump right there. The 20 is just a crucial number when it comes to these receiving props. Odds are 0s and 5s are the ones that end up catching you. That's not what you want to see. You want to see that 19.5. I think that's a perfect play. So for this Commanders offense so far, we are going to track this at BetMGM for minus 115. That's the best odds that you can get across any sports book. So as it sits right now, Noah Brown over 19.5 receiving yards. Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt over 38.5 rushing yards. I think he's running back 1. He's going to get a lot of carries here on the road early. And then Jaden Daniels over 46.5 rushing yards. This guy is a certified scrambler. The Packers do not have a lot of recent game experience against quarterbacks that can run. I like what I've seen so far from the Commanders offense on the drives that they've been efficient on. I think they can get some of these kinks worked out in the offense and be more efficient going into week 2. Last prop that I want to look at, the Packers. This is one where we're going to use 2 sides of the Doink Sports tool. Zach Ertz has been somebody for the Commanders offense, especially late in the year and the NFC Championship and the divisional game versus the Lions. He saw 5+ targets in both of those games. Overall, he's averaging around 6 targets a game, 20% of the target share. That's something that's consistent and, in my opinion, does not change with the addition of Deebo Samuel. Consistently getting 5 or 6 targets a game is exactly where you want to see Zach Ertz at. And we don't even have to use the filter tool because over here, the Packers on average are having tight ends on opposing offenses get around 6 targets per game. Receptions wise, they're averaging 4.6. It's a pretty comparable statistic. Now, Zach Ertz, in my opinion, is still a top 10 tight end in the league. His stats don't necessarily reflect that, but what does is the Packers' defensive statistics. They've allowed tight end ones to go over 34.5 yards 7 of the last 10 games. That is something that I've put at extreme value, and at minus 110 from MGM, I thoroughly like that play. So we're just going to go ahead and track that, and we're going to move on to the Packers. I think we've covered pretty much every basis of this Commanders offense. We got the quarterback run game, a wide receiver prop, a tight end prop, a running back prop. I love the overs in these games. It's hard to pick the unders just because it's hard to hate on some guys, but our first play with the Packers is actually going to be an under. And that is going to be Jordan Love here under 20.5 completions. As you can see, the Packers just have not been passing the ball that much. They have found a ton of success in the run game. And as you can see down here in the bottom, the Commanders' running back one defense has not been the best in the world. They're allowing 80 yards per game to running back ones. Josh Jacobs is somebody that freaking feasts on that kind of stuff. I think the Packers stay committed to the run game here. Even though it wasn't that successful, they stayed committed last week. 19 carries for Josh Jacobs for just 66 yards. But moving back to the main play, I want to see what Jordan Love is made of in these big game situations. We've seen over the past couple of years, he has done fairly well, but the Packers just have not used him in these spots. He reminds me a lot of Jalen Hurts with the Philadelphia Eagles. Jordan Love has top 10 quarterback potential. I think a lot of people would put him in that category, but the sample size on the field is just not enough, in my opinion. As you can see, the majority of these games is averaging around 24 attempts per game. Not that great. So do I expect him to go 21 of 24 or even 21 of 26? That's a very high completion percentage versus a Commanders defense that is only allowing 18 completions per game. This is a prop that I really like here, and we can find it at Fanatics for -110. Once again, great value. Using the Doink Sports tool, we find the sports books that are offering the best odds on these props. So we're going to go ahead and slam that real quick. Under 20.5, I'm sorry, -113 on DraftKings. We'll track that real quick. And that's our fifth prop of the night. Let's continue down and explore some of these other ones. Josh Jacobs, to me, the lines are spot on. 18.5 is the line for his rush attempts. And as we can see, he is consistently at that 18 mark. As a matter of fact, the majority of his unders here, 18, 17, 18, 18. 40% of the time he's going over. Now, in some of these warmer weather games early on in the season, the Packers have kind of aired it out a little bit more than usual. But as we can see, the formula for winning is giving Josh Jacobs the ball. Where he's green, the Packers have won, right? Where he's over 18.5 rushing attempts, the Packers win. Right here versus Detroit, versus Seattle, Miami, and San Francisco. Those are big-time matchups, and Josh Jacobs is the victory formula for the Packers. Now, looking at the Commanders' defense, once again, when this line is over, it's well over, and it's going to bell cow backs like Saquon Barkley. Rico Dowdle last year was the bell cow back for Dallas. We see it again with him in November. I genuinely think that this Washington Commanders defense is going to allow the Packers to game plan around Josh Jacobs. So that 18 to 19 carries is somewhere in the mix of what we'll see. Much less or much more, I would be very surprised by. I don't think that this prop holds a lot of value. Similarly to their rushing yards run or line here, I think Josh Jacobs, when you give him the volume, can go over this line. But we all know that the Commanders' run defense last year was not great. Yet that average there at the end, 80.3, is slightly worrisome because that's right on the line. And as we can see last week versus Tyrone Tracy Jr., 10 carries, 24 yards. So just 2.4 yards per carry. That's not a prop that I love. Next up, longest rush. Similarly to these other ones, it's right on the line. As we can see here, most of these are in the 40, 50th percentage-wise. Over here, 50-50 as well. We're going to move on because I can harp on this all day with Josh Jacobs. I don't necessarily think that these props right here for him are completely overvalued or completely undervalued. Just great sharp lines there from Vegas. Chris Brooks did not receive hardly any of the share last week. just one carry, one reception, not much to talk about there. It's clear that Jacobs is the running back one and the only guy who really sees the field for the Packers offense. Let's talk about these Packers receivers. I do not see hardly any value in these props as well. The only one that I've loved so far that I've seen is Jordan Love under 20 and a half completions. Similarly, with these receivers, Jaden Reed, Matthew Golden, the rookie from Texas, and then Romeo Doubs, that's been with the Packers now for quite some time. These lines are all just very even. We see 3.5 catches for Jaden, 3.5 receptions for Jaden Reed, 2.5 receptions for Matthew Golden. And then last but certainly not least, Romeo Doubs also at 3.5 catches. The Commanders have shut down wide receiver threes, but to call Romeo Doubs a wide receiver three, in my opinion, is an oversimplification because I don't think any of these receivers stand out as quote unquote the guy. So I do not like any props here for receivers. Looking at tight ends, Tucker Kraft has consistently gotten about 20% of the receiving game. Taking a look at his last 15 games, he gets, roughly 20%. The Commanders in their last 15 games, also roughly 20% for tight ends, consistently under some of these lines. 46.5, 7 out of the last 15, they've allowed under 40.5. And in Tucker Kraft's last 15 games, 40% of those he goes, or 60% of those he's going under, 40% he's going over. Now, the Commanders did a great job versus Theo Johnson last week, somebody that I was really high on going into the season. Just 3 targets, 1 catch for 5 yards. Now, last week, Kraft got 4 targets, 2 catches for 16 yards. The one prop that I really am tempted to take, and as a matter of fact, I'm kind of talking myself into it as we sit here and look at this, is Tucker Kraft under 40.5 yards. As a matter of fact, as we click this prop down here, we can explore some of these other ones. And we see here at minus 112 with FanDuel, we get an extra yard for just 2 points. Another piece of value when using the Doink Sports tool. Now, I'm going to take a pause here and talk about Doink Sports. This is a great tool to get the best leverage. If you want, as you can see here at the bottom of your screen, use code Plaisant when talking about buying any of the packages here with Doink Sports. 25% off. I think there's a ton of value. Give it a try. You can actually look at this Commanders and Packers game tonight for free. Test it out. Let me know what you think. You can send me a DM here on Twitter at aplant63 or find me at other social medias. Look up Plaisant, Plizont on Instagram, YouTube, TikTok. That's the way to find me. Tell me what you think of Doink Sports. I'd love to know. I have thoroughly enjoyed it so far, and I am going to go ahead and track this one as well. Under 41.5 for Tucker Kraft. Here you can find it plus 110 at Novik. That's a sharp book. That's not one that a lot of people have accounts at. So FanDuel at minus 112 is the one that we're going to be talking about here. So we're pretty much done with our player props. We're going now to talk about the over-under in this game. We'll get into some touchdowns after that and then look at sides at the very end. So over-under props, let's take a look. As we can see here, first quarter is kind of a mixed bag in the last 10 games for the Packers and the Commanders. What I like to do in these is look at the away props for the away team, the home for the home, because these two teams bring back a lot of continuity and consistency. That's something that I'm really paying attention to when talking about what is going to go on in this game. I think these offenses are very similarly shaped to last season, same way as their defense. They've added a few more players, especially the Commanders on defense, but overall, the schemes stay the same. So we can use these excellent props here from Doink Sports over the last 10 games. I'm looking forward to taking a look at the first quarter. As we can see, 40% of the time, it's going over 9.5 for the Commanders. 60% of the time, it's going over for the Packers. So a 50-50 split there. But the thing of note is both averages are under 9.5. As a matter of fact, significantly, 7 or 0.7 points under 9.5 is something that I put a lot of attention to. If the averages are under, it's hard for me to believe that we can consistently hit that over first quarter line and make it make sense. Now, moving on into some of these other props, we'll go ahead and pull our tool over a little bit so we can look at the last 10 games in the first half and the second half. The props are pretty much not dichotomies. They're pretty much the antithesis of each other. As we can see, the Commanders are consistently going over this line in their games, and the Packers, for the majority of these, are going under. The one that I really like is the first half over. The only problem with that is we don't see a ton of juice here. Minus 120 at DraftKings. Once we get into the 120 to 130 parts of lines, when we're talking about straight bets, I think you lose too much value. You're talking about 30 cents per dollar you're giving up there. We call it the juice. I don't like that. So the Commanders are hitting this at 60% of the time. The Packers are also hitting that at 60% of the time in their last 10 games. However, at minus 120, the value is just not there. Now, I've put 6 prop bets up here on the screen for you guys to take a look at. We've talked about them over the last 30 some odd minutes. But what I want to note is nobody's perfect. I'm not going to go 6 for 6. Odds are. I'm not asking you to make this into a parlay. I'm specifically talking about finding value. And that's exactly what you're getting here with Doink Sports. You're looking for somewhere along the lines of a minus 110 to minus 118, 119. And you can find that so easily using this tool. That is what I thoroughly enjoy about Doink Sports. And as we can see here, a lot of these props for the over-under are just too different from both of these teams. The Commanders have put up a ton of points in their games combined score-wise. The Packers have not necessarily done that. That's what concerns me. So over-under-wise, this is a stay away for me. Let's go and take a look at the touchdowns. Anytime touchdowns, I think, are probably everyone's favorite player prop. Looking at these, let's go ahead and take a look at some of the values here. Hang on one second. Let me find exactly what I'm looking for here. Okay. Here we go. Green Bay touchdown odds. This is what I'm looking at. Excuse me. Jordan Love anytime touchdown over half a touchdown is plus 641. I don't necessarily think that the Commanders are going to allow him to do that. Plus 641 is a hell of a lot of juice. I don't think Jordan Love has done this too often. Another great thing, you can look at Jordan Love's game log here, and we can take a look at rushing touchdowns over basically his entire career. We're looking right now filtered at 25. We only see 1, 2, 3 touchdowns rushing in his last 25 games. So even though that's plus 641, I do not like that prop at all. Josh Jacobs at minus 166. His time with the Packers. Let's take a look at it. Let's click his name here. We can look at his game log. Rushing touchdowns wise, he has scored a rushing touchdown in his last 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 games. 10 for 10. I thoroughly enjoy an anytime touchdown prop. Minus 166, however, is not the best odds in the world. Novig is your best. Caesars has it at minus 200. I think that's a stay away. Now, looking at the Commanders' sides of things, we've got Austin Eckler at plus 250, Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt at plus 230. Now, Krosky-Merritt, if we're looking at his game log from last week, like I said, 10 carries, 82 yards, and a rushing touchdown. I think we'll see more of that. And we've seen some of that in the comments here. Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, Bridge says, is probably going to become the running back one over time. I agree with that. And so anytime touchdown props for a running back one at plus 230, I like those odds. So plus 230 We are going to track that as well. We get that on DraftKings. That's the best you can get. Underdog has got it at plus 213. Caesars at plus 210. I like that thoroughly. So we're going to track that. Talking about Jaden Daniels anytime touchdown. Let's take a look at his game log. Rushing touchdown wise, in his last 10 games, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, we see 3 games where he's done that. So 30% and his anytime touchdown odds are at plus 175. That is a no-go there. 70% of the time he's not scoring a rushing touchdown. 30% of the time he is, and you're only getting 1.75 for every dollar that you spend. That's a no-go in my opinion. Taking a look at Noah Brown at plus 600. Red zone target share from this last week, he got 50% of it. I think he is a crucial part of the red zone targets. If we take a look last year, however, he only had 7.7 on the entire season. I think Deebo Samuel, Terry McLaurin, those are some of the guys that you look at to get value out of. But one guy that I want to talk about is Zach Ertz. He got the other 50% of the red zone target share, and he scored his touchdown last week. And his anytime touchdown is at 280. Once again, another prop that I really like. As a matter of fact, I am going to renege on my Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt anytime touchdown. Actually, we're going to stick with both of those. I think that you can find value in one or the other. And if one hits and the other doesn't, you're still getting at least 1.3 times for every dollar that you spend. That's what I like here about these anytime touchdowns. We've got 2 from the Commanders. Let's try to find one that we really like. Like I said, Josh Jacobs at minus 166 via Novig. Most people are not going to get those lines. We're looking at Caesars at minus 200. I don't like that whatsoever. Last week, Dubs had 33% of the red zone target share. But let's go back and look at this Packers offense from last year, because in my opinion, it's pretty much the same. So looking at last year using the Doink Sports filter tool, we see Tucker Kraft got 21% of the target share. That's something that's very interesting to me because Tucker Kraft is plus 228, which is actually less than Zach Ertz. That's something of note. Once again, not a touchdown prop that I love there. Romeo Dubs at plus 242, Matthew Golden at 295. These guys, if there were only 2 wide receivers here and they were around the plus 300 range, I would recommend taking both of them at plus 300. But because they're in the 230 to 250-ish range, Matthew Golden here at plus 295, it's not something that I love. All 4 of these guys, Reed, Golden, Dubs, and Kraft, any one of them could end up getting a touchdown here. As we can see, Tucker Kraft, Reed, Dubs, they all received red zone targets last week. I just don't necessarily love any of them specifically. So I tried to find a anytime touchdown that I really like here. I just did not see it. So we're going to move on, and we're going to wrap this up here with talking about the side. Now, this is part of Doink Sports that's in the works. As you could see from the rest of this live stream, you can track all of your bets. One of the ones that we're in the process of working on is tracking your side bets. That's first quarter, second quarter, third quarter, fourth quarter, first half, second half, money line, and spreads. So for right now, you cannot track it, but in the future, it will absolutely be something that you can track. But overall, though, you still get a ton of value here using the Doink Sports tool because you can still see all of the game logs over the last 10, 15, 30 games, specifically looking at the last 15 games for the Commanders. Their first quarter spread has been kind of poor, especially versus the good teams from last year. Dallas, Tampa Bay, Detroit, Philadelphia. They struggled there at the end of the season. Overall, only covering a half-point spread 7 of the last 15 games. Now, looking at the Packers, they're at 60% covering this spread. Specifically in the last 10 games, they were able to do it 7 times. This to me points to the differential between what the Commanders do well versus what the Packers do well. I didn't talk about this in my preview, but I want to talk about it right now. The Packers are the perfect scripted team for the vast majority of Jordan Love's career. Looking at some of these, they scored 10 points in the first quarter, a touchdown, field goal, 10 points, 2 touchdowns, 7 points, a field goal here, and 10 points. The Packers' defense, on the other hand, has been great at stopping teams from scoring the football. The only game that they truly struggled in was this Minnesota game. And that one, the Packers were able to come back later on in the game and make it competitive. But the prop that I really like here is Packers first quarter money line plus 105. On script, in my opinion, the Green Bay Packers are one of the best teams in the NFL. Whereas the Commanders on script with Jaden Daniels have not been great. Looking at some of these lines, 0, 0, 0, 3 under, 4, 11. And a lot of these are coming against comparable teams to the Packers. The Rams, the Bucks, the Lions, and the Lions, the Eagles. I think the Packers are on par with them there. They're Super Bowl contenders. The Commanders are on the road. The Packers at home have really been able to do a good job of getting rolling. Filtering this out once again, just looking at the last 10 games holistically, the Packers have done an excellent job in their last 10 games covering the half-point spread. Let me know what you think of this prop. This is probably my favorite one of the night. I think the Packers get rolling early. The Commanders are able to make some magic later on. So let's close out with a good recap, a little bit of knowledge for everybody here who has not gotten to pay attention to every single pick that we've made. We started about 45-ish minutes ago. Zach Ertz, actually, we'll get into the touchdown props here at the end. So let's go down here to the bottom. First prop that I took, Jaden Daniels, over 46.5 rushing yards. We can go back and take a look at the Packers in their dual threat struggles versus quarterbacks that can run the football, i.e. Justin Fields. Caleb Williams had a really good game. And Jaden Daniels, when he gets over 8 rushes per game, has hit this line almost every single time. A lot of value there at minus 112 from Caesars. Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, over 38.5 rushing yards. We saw last week he became the bell cow back, 10 carries, 82 yards. I think we'll see more of the same here. If he gets 11, 12 carries in this game, which is very likely, I do believe that he can average 3.7, 3.8 yards per carry and get over this line. All it takes is one explosive run from JCM here to get over that. Next up, Noah Brown, over 19.5 receiving yards. The Commanders have consistently targeted him in his 12 games with them. I think we'll see more of that. He averages about 2.5 catches per game, hits that over 19.5 in 80% of his last 10 games. I think he'll hit that. Zach Ertz, over 34.5. The Packers defense in their last 10 have struggled against some of the better tight ends in the league. I think Zach Ertz is that, and he averages around 4 catches per game, 6 targets per game. With being on the road, you want to go with somebody who provides continuity and consistency. I think the veteran Zach Ertz does exactly that, and that is what is going to get this Commanders offense rolling maybe in the second quarter. I think Ertz at 34.5 over receiving yards is a really good prop. Next up, Jordan Love, under 20.5 passing completions. Quite frankly, in their last 10, 15 games, the Packers just have not used the passing game as one of their strengths. Rightfully so, because Josh Jacobs is so unbelievably bruising and effective as you give him more carries going down the road. Jordan Love under 20.5 completions. I think this Commanders defense is stout, especially in the front seven. That pass rush, Von Miller is there in Washington. I think they can get to Jordan Love, put some pressure on him, and make some of those incompletions that are going to be unbelievably crucial to this line. So under 20.5 at DraftKings, minus 113, a ton of value there. Next up, Tucker Kraft over 41.5. Or I'm sorry, this actually is supposed to be under. This is supposed to be pairing with, let me delete that bet and we will go and make that one more time. Tucker Kraft should be under. So let's go back to the player props. This is another great part of the Doink Sports tool. You can interchangeably change your bets over and over and over again as many times as you want. So scrolling on down here, let's see. We've got Matthew Golden, and here he is, Tucker Kraft. So let's look at this right here. We're tracking this. Let's hit track bet, and we want the under, and we want to take Caesars, and that, there we go. Caesars minus 113, under 40.5. Let's continue to recap this. I do not think the Commanders' defense, as we can see here in their last 10 games, are allowing that many yards to tight ends. The ones that they do, Dallas Goedert, Sam Laporta, Kyle Pitts, these are some of the more talented tight ends in the league and a focal point of opposing offenses. I don't necessarily think Tucker Kraft is that, and his stats reflect that as well. 33% of his last 15 games has he gone over his receptions. Only 40% of his games has he gone over 40.5. I think we'll see more of the same tonight with the Packers being at home. Let's continue to talk, though, because we've got two more that I want to cover here. Zach Ertz and Ja'Cory Crosky-Merritt. I think one of these two guys score a touchdown tonight for the Commanders. And so you get about 130 points of value if one of these guys scores a touchdown. If we're lucky, both of them will. So overall, we've got 8 bets here, or I'm sorry, 9 bets that we're tracking. The last one that we're going to talk about in the sides is the Packers first quarter money line. The Commanders have overall struggled in their last few games. As we can see, they're only first quarter money line 50% of the time, whereas the Packers are at 70%. The Packers are a really strong scripted team, whereas, as you can see in the second half of games here, the Commanders take off. 70% are they winning the money line here at plus 1.5. Those are the two opposing ones that I want to look at. If you want, you can take that second half Commanders plus 1.5. I think that's some decent value at Caesars minus 115. However, that's not one that I'm going to track. So we've got 10 here tonight that I think bring a lot of value. Once again, shoot me a DM at Plaisant, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube. Let me know which props you're taking. I thoroughly enjoy Thursday night football. I know a lot of people hate on it. I find it to be a lot of fun. Some of these games end up being slop fests. Some of them, like the Cowboys-Eagles last week, were barn burners until the weather delay. So unfortunate situation there. But last week, I just want to note, I had 8 player props, I believe, and we went 6-2 last week. I think we'll have another strong game tonight. We've got 10 that we're tracking. We'll let you know how we do in our next video. That's going to be it. Like I said, you can find me at Plaisant on any social media platform. That's TikTok, YouTube, Instagram. You can find me at APlant63 on Twitter. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. Be sure to tune into our next stream. I believe it will be Friday night tomorrow at 5 p.m. Thank you guys so much for watching. We'll see you guys next time.